Good morning, everybody. I think everybody on this call today is either a client of Cowgill's or a close contact of the practice. We would obviously have much prefer to have been doing this sat in a meeting room somewhere over a cup of coffee, but unfortunately we're on the kind of fainted Zoom today. And I have to say, when it's a wet kind of Thursday morning in January, I think the prospect of going through kind of VAT and domestic reverse charge isn't the most attractive, but it is incredibly important to the sector, really. So today is really just to give you a kind of overview of our current understanding of the reverse charge rules for building and construction. This will undoubtedly evolve over time, so there's going to just be an element of getting into this and seeing how it pans out. But this is very much just to give you our current kind of understanding of the rules, if that's okay. Okay, just go to the next slide, please. For those of you that don't know us, I head up property and construction at Cowgill's. So I'm not a tax expert by trade, but I'm accompanied by Carolyn, who's our head of VAT. Carolyn's an ex-VAT inspector and has got real specialism in the construction sector. So at certain points they'll be deferring to Carolyn's expert knowledge. Just in terms of any questions that you may have, there's a chat box at the side there. I think most people will be familiar with now. What I'm going to suggest, if it's okay, is any questions you have at any point, if you just pop those in the chat box there, and then once we've got through the slides at the end, we'll have a quick kind of Q&A session at the end. It may be that some of the questions are a bit more involved and a bit more kind of technical. We may have to take answering those offline at a later stage, but we'll do our best to answer what we can today. Okay, just pass on to the next slide, please. The changes do come in now as of the 1st of March, which is just kind of six weeks away. I think the key principle is that if you think of the construction industry scheme, if anywhere your business is linked to the scheme, then this will be relevant to you. Next slide, please, Claire. So key points, really, this kind of an overall summary, I suppose, is the reverse charge is only in relation to business supplies in the construction industry. Implementation has been delayed twice. I think the first session that Carolyn ran on this was about 14-15 months ago. Was it, Carolyn? I think 2019.
Yeah, September 19.
September 19. So it was largely delayed because of, I think, the kind of fear of Brexit really was the main kind of concern at the time. I had thought that it might get delayed again because of COVID, but as we sit here today, we don't actually see any evidence of that happening. So I think we're going to be in play as of the 1st of March. The customer receiving the construction service will still have to report on the reverse charge, and I think it's important to know that this does not apply to the end users, which we'll come to later, although there's a little bit of a quirk on that which I can explain. Whilst the services do largely gel in with the existing definition of construction services, there are the odd thing that doesn't apply, such as drilling and kind of carpet fitting for some reason. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. And one of the main changes will be that businesses will have to update their invoicing procedures in order to be able to apply the charge. Next slide, please, Claire. In terms of impact, we think it'll be in two areas: cash flow, potentially positive and negative, depending on where you are in the chain. And I think the biggest burn is probably going to be administration and hassle, to be honest. Which again we'll come to later. Next slide, please, Claire. Why is it being brought in? Well, this is not a new concept. I don't know if any of you remember the kind of mobile phone VAT for us that were going on maybe 5, 6, 10 years ago. It was actually brought in to combat that issue. So what's been happening over many years is organised crime, organised criminals have been setting up companies, charging VAT, getting that paid by the customer and taking the money and disappearing. So this is a revenue's attempt to stop that. I think it has been successful, Caroline, in relation to the mobile phone and computer chip arenas. I also think this has been in for construction for quite a while over in the Republic of Ireland. You know, and again, it's been successful there. So that's the reason why it's been brought in. Next slide, please, Claire. Well, obviously, what will be happening at the moment is that the various businesses will be entering into contracts or already in contracts that will span the 1st of March. So that now the rules will depend upon whether the services have been provided before the 1st of March or after the 1st of March, or if you're operating in effect a application for payment mechanism, then the payment dates will then become relevant. So if you just see a little bit further down the slide there, if the supplies are made before the 1st of March, and this is the key point here, but the payment date will be on or after the 1st of June, then you will still need to apply the domestic reverse charge rules. So there's no much clarification. I think it's when the technical due date is, not necessarily when you get paid, Caroline.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, under these transitional rules, it goes off the due date. So those are set out there. I think it's easier for where invoices are raised. It's a bit more, it's clear cut. It goes off the date of the invoice.
Yeah.
But there are some special rules for applications.
So it's, I mean, hopefully this is rare, but in terms of due dates, if you have technically given over 90 days terms or receiving 90 days terms, and that element might be relevant to you. Next slide, please, Claire, if you don't mind. Thank you. I think this is quite a key point here for I know some house builders are on the call today. This is only applies to VAT charges at the standard rate, i.e. 20% currently, and at the reduced rate of 5%. It does not apply to zero related supplies, which principally relates to new build projects. Next slide, please, Claire. Just in terms of kind of more specifics as to where the charge applies, key points, this is only to VAT registered businesses who are within CIS. This does cover most of the services between main contractors and subcontractors in the UK, but as mentioned, it does not apply to the end user, i.e. the person is ultimately taking possession of or using the building that's been constructed. The end users will need to notify the supplier that they are the end user, and in effect that's where the chain breaks from a reverse charge perspective. There are some potential planning areas around the end user not notifying the supplier and therefore falling out of the reverse charge. I think that's something that we need to pick up on a separate conversation, because that is quite, there's a planning opportunity there, but more at the behest of the end user rather than the main contractor. Revenue have confirmed really that you need to answer yes to the 5 questions below to fall within the charge. So one, is there any of the supplies you're making within the scope of CIS? Is it standard or reduced rated? Is your customer VAT registered? Will your payment be reported on the CIS? And are you certain the customer is not an end user? If all those 5 questions are answered positively, then the services will most likely fall within the reverse charge. Next slide, please, Claire. There's this bit, I believe, Carolyn, is an update to the kind of draft legislation that was brought in previously. Now, this is really about the end user notifying the contractor that they are the end user. We've got some example wording there. I think in the circumstances of most people on this call today, they won't be the end user. So, but this is terminology that you may see coming through in relation to some of your contracts or jobs. There are also
this was an update from the first guidance that came out. This is sort of since come out, so it is quite helpful in terms of clarifying who's who in the chain.
Yeah, and I think the assumption is that unless you have been told that your customer is the end user, then you must assume that they are not. Carolyn, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
There are some oddities around connected and related companies. So intermediary suppliers are really, so say for example, you have a construction company building a project for a commonly controlled property investment business, then there's the end user status can in certain circumstances flow down to the contractor that is building the property on behalf of the investment company, if you will. So that's a little bit of a quirk that we just need to have a look at when that pops up. But yeah, but you need to be told by the end user that they are an end user. Otherwise, you just don't. You just assume that the reverse charge applies in the same way. Next slide, please, Claire. If the reverse charge doesn't apply, ignore it and just account for VAT as you would have done prior to the introduction of the reverse charge. There's no other alternative treatment. You're just back to basics. Okay. Right. There's a lot of kind of detail on this first slide and next slide in terms of the types of works that the charge applies to. Again, this fits in very closely with the construction industry scheme kind of definitions. It's pretty wide reaching there. I wouldn't suggest that I go through each and every one of those. We'll send through a copy of the slides after this session today. But as you can see, it's pretty comprehensive in terms of the services that being provided. Go through some next slide, please, Claire. There's in here a specific list of exclusions as well. So again, very comprehensive, very particular. The reasons why some of these services don't apply. The logic I just don't know, if being honest. But I think having it's understanding in a particular situation what does or doesn't apply should be fairly straightforward, but could be quite complicated if you're getting a mix of services involved. So it's going to take a little bit of navigating this for a while, I think.
I would just comment on that slide, Stuart, that with a lot of VAT administration, if a transaction is something that you ordinarily do, then you will sort of understand how it should be treated. But it's if you ordinarily supply one thing, but you have occasional supplies of something else, then people just need to be vigilant and just maybe go back to the list and check.
Okay. I think having the list to hand is going to be important as we can navigate through the early stages of this, certainly. Thanks, Claire. So please. So in terms of what it actually means for the business, we'll just chat through a few points here. So you obviously you'll need to contact your customers and just confirm if the reverse charge applies. As a subcontractor, you'll no longer charge any VAT on your sales. so what will happen ultimately is that the main contractor will charge VAT, will be paid that VAT, and will ultimately become responsible for accounting for that VAT to the revenue. What that will do probably is put the main contractor in a little bit of a more, not necessarily more so than now, but in a position where they can use the VAT for cash flow purposes, and that ability to hold on to the VAT, use that for working capital, will be taken away really from the subcontractor. So this could impact possibly on the subcontractor quite significantly. But what it may do is actually put the subcontractor into a repayment situation on a quarterly basis. If that's the case, then we'd recommend, pretty quickly having a look at this and possibly moving to a monthly VAT returns, which would help speed up the receipt of the net VAT repayment coming through every month. That's the only real sensible way of planning this. But holding on to the VAT will just not be a means to help with the cash flow really anymore as of the 1st of March, I'm afraid. Just in terms of the physical entries within your return, I think the relevant box is box 6. Carolyn, can you just maybe chat through the specific mechanism to put the entries onto the VAT return in a reverse charge scenario?
Yeah, so if you raised an invoice for say £10,000, there'd be no VAT. The invoice would show the statement that it's a reverse charge supply. The £10,000 would feed through into box 6, which is the net sales value, and the output tax would be nil. The output tax due will be entered into the contractor's box 1 of his VAT return. Yeah?
Yeah, great. Next slide, please, Claire, if you don't mind. Okay, so this is presumed for the sorry, the dog's barking in the back. The joys of lockdown, eh? I could get a good price for these, I think, at the moment. But anyway, so from the perspective of the main contractor, I think the key point here for me is you're ultimately responsible for the VAT. So you'll charge VAT to the end user, and they'll essentially all the VAT through the supply chain is being accounted for by the main contractor on that specific contract. So it does, give again a slight advantage in terms of that, and I think we all know in construction particularly it can be a fairly tense sector, and cash is obviously king in certain circumstances, and could the main contractor try and use that cash to kind of squeeze the price on the subcontractor a little bit for early payments, etc. Maybe that will happen a little bit more as a result of this. That's really the impact for the main contractor for me. But obviously they have the kind of greater administration and need to understand the flow of services coming into that business, because obviously they're dishing out packages left, right, and centre through the the subcontract chain. So the administrative burden for the main contractor will be greater.
I mean, I would just add there, Stuart, as well, that if there's an under declaration of VAT, if there's errors, then it will also be the contractor here who will potentially receive an assessment from Hmrc. Which
will not necessarily be capable of being passed down the chain if there was a problem. Is that right, Caroline?
Yes. So that is possibly one of the biggest risks here. Well, I think later on we talk about a light touch, but
Yeah.
I think it's worth
The
mentioning
advantage
here
from a
about
cash flow perspective is very much with the main contractor, but it's got the risk associated with that, really.
yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Claire. Very simply, no, it doesn't. So this needs to be a business-to-business transaction. So if you're getting your extension from the home, your conservatory, whatever it's, that isn't going to apply. What may happen is part of the supply. There'll be elements that are. I think Karen alluded to this before, where there will be supplies that are relevant to reverse charge and some that aren't. The revenues approach seems to be that, well, just assume it's under the reverse charge. I think there is a de minimis limit, Carolyn, is there, in terms of the percentage?
Yeah, the guidance talks about if there's a minor element of 5% or less, then it can be disregarded. So so that's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, okay. Next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. Now, obviously, there is going to be an element of uncertainty here. The revenue have mentioned explicitly that there will be a relatively light touch approach in the first 6 months. What that means and what the revenues interpretation of light touches are, we just don't know at the moment. The revenues stance appears to be if in doubt, assume it falls under the reverse charge, and so I think if that's done and that ultimately proves to be incorrect, then I think the chances for Hmrc having an issue with that are going to be pretty low, Carolyn. And I think that just speak to us because it is complicated. So if you're in any doubt at all, just have a chat with Carolyn or I, and we can, can hopefully help you on that. This is just a practical point, really, in the terms of invoices. They need to clearly show that the reverse charge applies. There's a few kind of examples there of wording that you can use. Again, if you want any specific advice on that, just give us a ring.
There is actually some guidance on the government website about reverse charge technical guide, and one of the annexes includes an example invoice.
Okay, so we can possibly share that round after the session,
Yeah.
Carolyn, to everybody on the call. Yeah, and I do know that Sage, for example, I think a lot of the major kind of software providers are, have already brought this in into the systems, but we think creating a new invoice template for reverse charge. Now, it may be obviously the vast majority of what you do is reverse charging, therefore you just change your base template. But I think having two templates, one for reverse charge and one for non, would probably make sense moving forwards. This slide here is just really to point you in the right direction to verify the customers or suppliers throughout the chain. Really, you do want to check. Well, there's not an obligation to do so, Carolyn, but you can check if the VAT number of your customer or supplier is valid using the link.
Yeah, that's right.
And verify that the customers registered for CIS, just in case you've got any doubts. You don't have to do so, Carolyn, I believe.
Well, if you look at the flow chart, it does talk about whether your customer is VAT registered. So I think you perhaps do need to check that the VAT registered.
In relation to CIS, that's all. It's not a requirement for CIS. I don't think you check, is it? I don't. It's for VAT.
Well, the flow chart says, is your customer registered for CIS? So, okay. And if you say no to that, then the normal VAT rules apply. So I think that would be one of the checks that people would need to do. I
think we just need to clarify perhaps a third point there on that slide. It does mention don't need to.
Okay, yeah.
And you know, just a list of information there that you will need in order to be able to make these necessary checks. This is about fraud. Again, most people I know on this call are very experienced operators, and they won't be dealing with companies they've never heard of before, and you know, be at risk of the fraud that the revenue have spotted, and hence why they brought in the reverse charge. But you just never know. So you know, that's a useful slide, I think, there. And just to finish off, really, how can we help? You know, if you know, from a non-technical perspective, if funding does become a problem, then you know, we can help with that. You know, if you need any advice chatting through your supply chain and kind of flow charting everything through into your own business, just support in terms of picking the phone up and having a quick chat through a particular situation or an issue that you have. You know, as and when specific queries pop up that needs, you know, a little bit more technical input, I'm sure Caroline will be more than happy to pick those up. If you need any help with your existing software accounting systems, processes, again, I'm more than happy to have a chat. And I think the last point here, it's not this is not kind of a selling thing from our perspective, because we don't make any money on this, but we do offer fee protection for Hmrc inquiries. I think once we're through the light touch period, the revenue are bound to start to ask questions on the VAT returns about reverse charge, and that, whilst it's very cost effective, most of the people on this call will have it already, but that enables us to answer any queries on your behalf and the revenue without any additional costs. So I think that's quite useful, really. I think, Claire, that's you know, just into the conclusion, really. So for me, it's very simple. I think the last point is the main one for me, which is just speak to us if you're unsure. It's complicated. I think what will happen is, as the charge kicks in, it will settle down over time. But there might just be a little bit of heartache between now and then, I'm afraid. So, you know, for now, you just need to have a look what's going to span the 1st of March. Is that, you know, relevant to any of the contracts that you've currently got on? May well be in a number of certain circumstances. You need to plan now, because there's only 6 weeks, like I say. Start to engage with your customers and supply chain. You know, some of them may not know. You know, some of the smaller subcontractors may be in the chain or not aware, or just don't think it will apply to them. So whilst you might be organised, they aren't necessarily, and that could then cause you problems by association. You know, make sure your Sage, whatever's up to date and sorted, and your templates are all ready to go. The other thing as well is, a lot of owners on this call of accountants, but you know, it isn't just the finance team that needs to be aware of this. It's obviously, you know, anybody involved, the commercial team, guys on project managers, everyone. They need to at least be aware of the impact of this, if not the fine detail of it. And again, we're more than happy to run kind of individual sessions for kind of in-house teams if needed, and model your cash flow. You know, if you do think you are going to be hit, then you need to understand the impact of that now, and whether that is going to, you know, mean that you need to put a bit more cash for a period. You're going to have to tweak your payment terms to, you know, to kind of get through the transition. It will settle down, but there could be a peak or trough in your cash flow throughout this period. So that needs to be managed and monitored now. Like I say, just please just speak to us if you're unsure. It is new. We have got experience, like I say, on the kind of mobile phone sector and the computer chip sector historically in terms of the operation, but I feel construction is just much more complicated. It can be more contentious. So you know, just please pick the phone up or send us an email. Okay, so that's the end of the slides for today. We have got a few questions kind of pop up in the Q&A there. So if I just go through those first and divert those through to Carolyn if I can do. First one just from Steve at Manchester. So hi Steve, hope you're okay. I wasn't technical. I was just about being able to see everybody, Steve. Just Cameron Nixon's there asking Carolyn, does anything change if the CAS contractor has gross payments there? So I don't think it does. Can you just confirm that?
I've no idea. I'm sorry. I don't know a lot about the CIS scheme. I wouldn't expect so, but I would have to come back to you on that.
I don't think he does, Cameron, is the answer, because you've got the gross payments there. So I think makes no difference. It's probably even more relevant in somebody that's got gross payment status. But we'll come back to that. But I don't think that's the case at all. Question here from Matt Fawcett, Carolyn. Now Matt's kind of model of handling a contract is what we call kind of management contracting. So Matt's business will manage the contract, the supply chain on behalf of his clients and customers, but the customer will liaise directly with the underlying subcontract chain. So as a Matt's business would charge a fee to the end user, but the end user would then employ the services of the subcontract chain directly. My view probably will be that they're an end user, but the end users then got multiple suppliers kind of feeding into them. So what would your view on that one be?
So an end user with multiple subcontractors would, I think, without looking into it in any detail, the supplies would be charged at the normal rate.
Okay.
But the end user would need to, give a letter to each of the subcontractors.
Just explaining that they are the end users. So in effect, all the subcontractors operate as though they were a main contractor.
Yes, if the end user is not on supplying those construction services, then the normal VAT rules should apply. Okay, and just Matt, hopefully that's clear enough. If you do need to have a chat, please just let us know. I know we can't have a conversation on this as such. Just a question here from Steve Kelly at Manchester Surfacing. Just asking, is there any definitive guidance to what an end user is? Is that defined in any specific detail anywhere within the legislation or the guidance, Carolyn? The guidance says that the businesses that are VAT and CIS scheme registered, but they don't make onward supplies of building and construction services.
Okay. So in fact, they aren't a contractor. So
they're a consumer of those services.
Okay, so perhaps we can just kind of share that specific wording with Stephen at the end of the call, if that's okay. Yeah. I don't have any more questions there in the chat or in the Q&A. So I think we've been at it, 35 minutes. I think that's probably enough for today, I think, just in terms of where we are. I'd just like to thank everybody for attending. Hopefully it wasn't too painful for you, that you've learned a little bit about the process today. Things will come out in the wash, as I said earlier, but please just don't feel afraid of picking up the phone or dropping us an email, and we'll help you the best we can. Even if anybody in your supply chain is struggling, we're happy to help, just to see help to see them through this kind of current situation. Thanks again, and hopefully speak to you soon.